I'm sorry I'm going to have to leave after this session, but it was great to be here and hear how much progress we have and have not made. This is about a project that David and I are involved in, and so David can handle the Q&A for sure. It's about the American Opportunity Study, which we're trying to build a register, essentially. I will call it a register in this group, I wouldn't elsewhere. A data bank, which allows you to go much further with administrative data than we have. And so that was David's front page, of course, Stanford, and I had to work around it, but I got not Stanford on the bottom there, so that was... The rest are all Stanford. So part of our problem is monitoring poverty. We don't do a good job monitoring real-time trends. A lot of people have talked about that today. To be quite honest with you, low-income, truly poor low-income people live month to month. They don't live year to year, and certainly not biennium to biennium. And then the policy evaluation deficit. We do not evaluate either the short or the long-term effects of policy very well. We're seeing more and more and more, but we're seeing more and more long-term effects. We're to the point where Susan Mayer can say, you know, I would have said this 10 years ago, but money makes a difference at the bottom of the distribution. There's studies in the AEJP, and what's unique to almost all of them is they use administrative data to find out what happened some period after. So can we help? This is one piece of a larger project at the Census Bureau, their CARA division, which is being inundated at the moment with federal, state administrative data, which they're trying to put together and match and make usable. Pat Ruggles is helping with that, among others. And the original idea came from, it's written up in this volume, the Annals came out just a year ago last month. So, here's what we would do. First of all, we'd like to link records from ACS and Census across as many years as we can. Okay? We've all who've been in this country for as long as we have, and have filled out a census form, we all have a 10-year panel. We all appeared somewhere at some point in the 10-year panel, and there's long forms and short forms, and we'd start to work with those and link them together. Okay? But then the real trick is to find a protected identification key, which means starting with somebody's name, address, where they were, an occupation, and so forth, and linking that to a social security number, essentially, which gives you a lot more leverage. Because then we go down to the next level, which is administrative data. And the administrative data, you know, you can start out with the obvious ones, SSA earnings, but also all the program data that we've got, childcare, education, military service, incarceration. There's a whole, and the federal government is pushing very much to make this data available and to use it more in analyses. Step 3 would be linking children with parents. You get a lot more multi-generational then, as since the mid-1980s, every child who's a citizen of the US has a social security number. And most of them are unique. And these are going to allow us to follow them along quite a while and to do some more intergenerational things. The last thing is this doesn't mean you don't need surveys or you don't need other studies. You put this warehouse or this framework that we've got sits around other studies. So you want to look at prison sentences in Alabama, and you've got a sample of Alabamians, and you know their social security numbers, and you know when they went into prison and when they came out of prison. That's an event. What were their earnings like? What was their life like? Where did they come from? Where did they go? Did they learn more? Veteran status, another one, and so forth. So where we got the idea, though, was from David Johnson, actually, because we were thinking we're going to do another survey of occupational mobility, and David got up and started talking about the SIP gold standard file. And all the bulbs went off in David's head and my head and other heads and said, wow, this is what we need. We need administrative data so we don't have to collect the things that we don't do a very good job collecting in surveys. You're still going to need surveys, but it's going to be much easier. A Northern European country, which I won't mention, has a one-page form for its CPS. Essentially, you fill it in and you sign at the bottom, and they go to the registers and get everything else in a confidential way, preserving privacy. So we have an NRC standardized standing committee, which is working on this now, and this is all the things they're doing. David will tell you anything else you need to know after if you have questions about it. So what will this allow us to do? It's certainly going to allow us to monitor the reproduction of poverty in the long run, intergenerational reproduction, persistence, small geographic units, three-generation analysis, sibling models, context of complex families, which is really important because we're going to be able to go back and get demography and be able to distinguish social, biological, and financial parents. That's one way of classifying them. And then the intergenerational inheritance of program participation as well. It's going to allow us to build better frequent poverty measures. Intergenerational reproduction, early life course reproduction, later life course reproduction, and so forth. So these are just some of the longer term ones. I'm trying to get to the shorter term one that I added at the end, which is more germane as to how we were talking and thinking this morning. Here's a small subsample of the long-term effects that we can get. Any treatment, any evaluation, any experiment. I get, when I was director of the Poverty Institute, and even Monday, I got an email from John Ludwig, hey, if you got those old negative income tax files around. I got a call from a PhD student here in economics in Stanford the year before. If you got any of those negative income tax files, that was a treatment. And what they want to do is to link it to administrative data and find out whether it made a difference in something other than labor supply, which is the only thing we really narrowly focused on when I was a graduate student at Wisconsin. So you have all sorts of programs that you've seen pieces and bits and pieces of this from specific studies that people have done. This is the idea is to democratize it so everyone can look at this and do the best job they can with this. And it's, again, we have the data. We just need to find a safe way to use it and to see how well we can link it. So often we don't have a comprehensive evaluation. If we take a survey, we have all those issues, and everything we said today is also surrounded by sampling and non-sampling error and an overall response error. It's not just item non-response and so forth. So we have these issues to deal with too. And then we resort to monitoring short-term effects, and we don't do as well as we could. Policy effects are really important, I think. Long run from short run effects, do they wash out? The current studies of the long run effects of Head Start and longer run effects of MTO are exactly the sorts of things you should do, because they don't, if the effects sort of wash out in terms of cognitive scores and Head Start, by the time you get to 20 or 21, there's a lot of other good attributes that somehow have come through. You can do falsification tests so that you can tell whether this particular event happened, whenever the event happened, whether that created the output at the right time. There's so much you can do here. And this is what we want to do. And it's also going to improve our short-run valuation of current programs. So now we're going to switch from our joint script, which we've given the script to Congress and whoever else. What's our most effective or most important anti-poverty program for families with kids? What do you think? Is it SNAP or is it the Earned Income Tax Credit? We spend about the same on both, and both of them have stayed up, by the way, very high. They've gone beyond the 2010 peak, and they have not come down much. And that's the EITC along with the additional child tax credit, the two together. People just think of looking at the EITC, the both of them. This is what we spend our money. You have to know what these programs do. That's what the SPM and all, it's the number one thing that almost everything we've talked about is about. This is where we put our efforts. What does this do to help poor people? Well, the winner is SNAP. It's highly target efficient, particularly on a monthly basis. People don't get this. Well, look at all that SNAP dollars that's spread out over over the annual poverty line. Would you run an emergency food program on an annual basis? Come back next year and we'll feed you. I mean, it's not. But month by month by month, it's very important. People have talked about it today. We're going to see how it affects the poverty count, gap, and severity. And when we adjust for underreporting and link with the AOS, we're going to be able to even do a better job than what we've done here. So I did a paper and we did imputation. Bruce has pointed out in a number of contexts that underreporting of benefits has gone from 72% to 53% in 2011. This is our biggest program. We're spending $80 billion a year and we're only getting half of it. What's going on? So I worked with administrative data and Laura Tahan at the ADA, and we followed this procedure. It's in this book. Sheldon says no one reads books anymore, but in case you do, something called the Stanford University Press has this book. Here's what happens. The effect of SNAP on the poverty rate, on the poverty gap or the depth of poverty, and on the FGT thing is more than double. It's more than double. It's an amazingly effective program, particularly for families with kids, but with other people, it's the only thing we have. It's our only safety net program that's essentially universal, okay? Now let's compare that, and others, Laura Wheaton was here, and we published a paper on it too, the California report, and Household Surveys in Crisis, which is in that paper and in the one that Bruce recently published, shows, where he actually used administrative data from New York, the rest of these didn't use it. It makes a huge amount of difference. So if you really want to understand what a program does and how important the program is, you have to do it this way. Okay. Now, how about this thing, EITC, CTC? What we all do, or most all of us do, is we run a tax imputation program because we can't do an administrative match with IRS data. Okay? And the imputations assume 100% take-up, but when there's a Maggie Jones inside the Census Bureau has done a couple papers now, she actually matched the CPS to IRS records and find out the take-up's only about 80%. So that's an issue, but in general, it's the people who would get the least. It doesn't look like it's too bad for poverty. But then Jim Ziliak has a couple papers that say that you can't rely entirely on administrative data because people at the bottom of the CPS report more in earnings than the SSA detailed earnings records. Could be foreign-born, people working off the books, who knows what. But if you run your model, on them, then you're giving them the EITC that they would never receive, because if you don't have the W-2, you don't get the EITC. Okay? So there's a whole bunch of things here. I think we're doing too much on the EITC and too little on SNAP. But these are the sorts of things we're going to get better at, the sorts of exact things we're talking about here today, which is why I took the time with this, if we can do the AOS. So it's going to allow for more accurate short-run estimates for all income support programs. In the add-in public housing, I wish, and many of you know, our state in Wisconsin, we have multiple program participation from state administrative records for 15 programs back from 2014 to 1985. You want to know about multiple program participation in Wisconsin? We know exactly who, what, where, and when. Now, if we had some more of that for other places, or at least the complete SNAP records or other really key important programs, we do much better. We'll get better estimates of program cutbacks. Already David's going to present my Wisconsin thing for tomorrow, but I can assure you that cutback in SNAP in November 2013, the SNAP benefits were cut back. They were increased during the ARA. They were cut back in November. I'm seeing it in next year's report. I can see it. And I checked it out 3 times. It's there. So we're going to have better estimates of both long-run and short-run effects of anti-poverty programs, and more broadly, we're going to be able to adjust for underreporting of other types of incomes and derive better inequality measures. So this is David's work, and it shows comparisons of CPS adjusted income with the adjustment factors being up to the national income and product totals. And you can see that on average, earnings are pretty good. That's the green one. You see government benefits, they're underreported. They're in the purple one. But what we're really missing, boys and girls, is all that income that's in the form of business income and property income and income that goes to people at the other end of the distribution. Okay? I'm very interested in that. David and I have a project on that. So this is going to allow us to get a better handle on lots of different things in terms of distribution and as well as poverty. So this is why we got to do it. Last slide, Don. The data's there. We have an antiquated measurement infrastructure. The opportunities for an investment like this come about only rarely, and a number of people are getting involved in it. I know that there was great interest from Ryan and Murray, but we have a committee now that's working their way through the thorny issues. Having a session on May the 9th. We're running a session in Washington, which brings people who do evaluation, do education programs, health programs, you know, Janet Curry, Gordon Berlin, Raj Chetty, and they're just going to answer two simple questions. What do you do now with administrative data? What do you think about this structure? What more could you do with it? And so we think this is a rare opportunity. It's going to improve monitoring, it's going to improve evaluation, and at low cost. We're very concerned about the privacy and confidentiality features here. No one's going to get access to the whole thing. The point is you put in your little piece, and that's what you get. So thank you very much for listening, and David or I and Matt Snip can keep you informed as we try and move this thing forward. Thank you.